Turn off your PC, don't turn off your PC, put it on sleep. What's the best option when it comes to saving electricity costs on your computer? And do those electricity costs even matter? How much does a PC even take in terms of wattage? That is exactly what we're going to find out today. Hey guys, my name is Beezito, and today we're taking a look at how much does a PC cost to run in terms of its electricity. In no way is this an objective test, we're just doing some testing using a cheap smart meter. Now, with that said, will this give us a pretty clear indication of how much we're spending on our computer in terms of electricity? Of course. So let's take a look.
This guy still has unactivated Windows. I keep telling him to activate it, but he won't listen. You know what that means.
Bro, this guy locked the door again? I know how to fix this. Where's my wallet? Check out keyspan.com for cheap Windows keys. If you use coupon code BEZ50, you can get 50% off Windows licenses. And if you use code BEZ62, you can get 62% off Microsoft Office, and they also have a Microsoft Office and Windows 11 bundle. You can pay via PayPal, and they have a pretty good customer support team. Check out Keyspan, linked in the description. And don't get locked in your room with Mr. Gorilla. For the system we'll be testing, it's just my normal PC, so we'll be using the Ryzen 7 7800X3D with PBO on. We have the Arctic Liquid Freezer 3, our GPU is probably the most important here, the RX 9070 XT, and then we are just using my Samsung 990 EVO here, so keep in mind the 870 EVO is not being used. We have 32 gigabytes of G.Skill DDR5 6000 CL30, and then our motherboard is the ASRock XA70E Taichi Lite, and then the case, Corsair 5000D with all of those fans everywhere, and our power supply, important as well, is just the Corsair RMX 1000. The first game we have up is Valorant, and as we can see here, the wattage was sitting pretty at around about 274.5 watts, so not too bad there. And as we can see, the power consumption is relatively low for this game. Just keep in mind this is not actual gameplay. The real map that I played on was Pearl, and we played a swift play, so an actual game but a shorter version of it. In Warframe we were sitting on 486.8 watts, and we were using the ludicrous settings, so quite high, and I know for a fact that this can get my PC quite warm with the amount of things that are happening on the screen and textures and particle effects that are happening. Now, apologize to the other guy in the game, I didn't realize this was a multiplayer session. Usually I do these solo, but we're on the map Mott for survival. If you guys know what that is, it is quite intense, so it's a good reference for Warframe, I feel. For Cyberpunk 2077 on 4K Ray Trace Ultra, we're sitting at 525 watts. Now let's go ahead and reduce our resolution down to 1440p and see what happens. Now at 1440p we're using slightly more wattage, and this is the flaw in our testing. See, we're going to 531 watts, so I really do think this is a problem with how I was testing at 4K, so I will revisit this later. Interestingly enough, at 1080p we're only sitting at 521.5 watts, so not too much of a difference at 4K for Cyberpunk 2077, but a small difference between the resolutions. We're using The Last of Us Part 1 here, and we're going to start on the 1080p result. That was 479 watts that we can see here in the 1080p Ultra run. And when we switch it up to 1440p, we get 537.6. Now there is something interesting that happens here, and I think it's due to the frame rate. Now at 4K, we have something a little bit odd happen. we go up to 527 watts, which is actually lower than our 1440p result. Now I do think this is because of our testing procedure. I only have a 1440p monitor, not a 4K native monitor, so I'm using the custom resolution utility to make sure that I can use 4K. Now unfortunately it does mean I'm capped out to 60 FPS. Yes, VSync is off, VSync is not on, but since we can only get a maximum of 60 frames per second, I do think it could suggest to us that the wattage could go higher if the frame rate was uncapped at 4K. So I will need to revisit this later. So as we saw from before, the 4K of course is around about 527.1 watts and on ultra settings. When we drop it down to the high settings, we go to 401 watts, so about 127 watts off, which is quite a bit. Then we go down to medium settings, now we're at 330, so around about 70 off. And then when we go to low settings, we have something interesting happen, and that's the wattage actually stays the same at 330. So it's cool to see the wattage difference between those settings even at 4K. So our minimum here was 330 watts and our maximum was 527. For general computer use, I used one single monitor with 2 tabs open, just YouTube and my email. Keep in mind that YouTube was the active tab the majority of the time, and we can see we only used around 202.9 watts when using the computer quite generally on Chrome. Not too many things open, so this is like a very unlikely case, but it can happen for people that use the computer very, very lightly. Now for my general use case, I have 3 monitors, so 2 1440p, 1 1080p, but as you can see here, the wattage is actually not changing. Now this includes going between Chrome, video editing on Premiere Pro a little bit lightly, Photoshop's open at the same time, OneNote's open for scripting, and just general use on Chrome as well. But we can see here that the wattage is pretty much the same with those applications open and 3 monitors. For our idle PC, we're at 177.6 watts. Nothing much to say about this, but we will draw on some conclusions later. So we know our idle wattage. Now let's take a look at what the actual wattage would be for if we put the computer to sleep. So we're going to put it to sleep here and let's see what we get. Cool. So we're only sitting around about 5.8 watts while the computer is asleep, so it still is drawing something of course, but it is a lot less than keeping our PC on idle. Now the other question was, how much wattage does it take to start my computer? So we're going to start it from cold boot here and let's see how much wattage it actually takes. Cool. So we're sitting around about 173.6 watts. Now I did notice when the startup apps were opening up, we did jump up to 221.3. Now of course this will calm down later as everything settles in. That's opening up on my screen. There is quite a few programs that will open up, but it's pretty obvious that if you put your PC to sleep or just turn it off, it is better than just leaving it on. I want to go over some quick problems with our testing and some nuances that come along with it. First off, we are not using the most accurate smart meter, which means it's off my phone and can only read 1 wattage at a time. While it can show the changes, it's not exactly live as far as I know. There's a little bit of a delay and I'm not sure how it's exactly getting the wattage readings or how it's calculating it. Second off, we are not testing objectively. There is no 3-run average. There's no average. There is no actual procedure here and there isn't any redundancies to check for any problems that we encountered. Even some runs were different, like there was a 5-minute one and there was a 1-minute one. Who knows, right? I found that wattages tend to jump a little bit and are not exactly precise, and hence an average result would have been better, but we didn't do that for this video. Third off, you will see later that reading the wattage from cold boot is difficult. It's hard to pinpoint, and as well, it's hard to actually see what it's supposed to actually be. Later on, you'll see it's just been averaged out. Our 4K results need to be retested, and I cannot reiterate this enough. I was using a custom resolution utility, custom resolution, which locked the 4K resolution to 60 Hz or 60 FPS, which showed in our 1440p result testing as the wattage was a bit higher compared to the 4K one, as far as I know. So I don't know if this is exactly right, but it doesn't seem right in terms of the trend. Fifth off, we are measuring the whole system power. This excludes monitors or anything else that might require power. Seventh, background apps were not fully closed. I kept them open to make sure it's a more realistic test per se and an actual workload. So some of you guys might be criticizing me for that, and fair enough, but I just want to keep this as close as it is to my actual PC and what I actually do day to day. Eighth, the conclusions we're about to make are not exactly based on the most objective, repeatable testing. So please keep that in mind when watching the rest of this video. So we'll be having a look at the graphed outcomes now. What I used to calculate the electricity cost as well was exactly what I'm being charged at the moment. So just the normal kilowatt per hour, which is 30 New Zealand cents. So keep that in mind when I'm doing the calculations for the costing right at the end of this video. So we have the AAA games first at 4K. We can see that at 4K, the cheapest game here is Warframe, then Cyberpunk, and then The Last of Us Part 1. Now, they all have pretty similar slopes here, and as you can see, over 12 hours for Warframe, it costs $1.80. For Cyberpunk 2077, it costs $1.94. For The Last of Us Part 1, it costs $1.94. Now, that means that you've had the game running constantly for 12 hours. That is quite a long time, and not very realistic. Let's quickly add our esport game being Valorant, and Valorant's only at $0.084 per hour. We can see when we get to 12 hours, Valorant is around about 93 cents cheaper compared to the other three games. Now, a 12-hour Valorant run might actually kind of be realistic for the people that play this type of game. So yeah, maybe I can give it to them for 12 hours or even 6 hours. Now let's have a look at 1080p versus 1440p and 4K. Now, interestingly enough, and we have to note this as well, that my 4K results are not exactly accurate, and that's because of the 60 FPS problem. We couldn't get past that because of the resolution utility that I was using. So as we can see here, at 4K for 6 hours, it's 97 cents. At 1440p, it's 99 cents. And at 1080p, it's 88 cents. So this is probably your worst case scenario for a AAA game, as this game uses a lot of wattage per hour. And of course, your overall usage will be higher. Now that is quite a long time to play these games as well, especially if it's AAA in my opinion, in one sitting, but it can be the cost of the entire game per se. So if the whole game was 12 hours long and you only spent 12 hours playing it, yeah, it would cost $1.94 to run that game just through the electricity on my PC. Now we're having a look at the low, medium, high, and ultra presets. So I think this is an interesting test as well, because we can see quite a dramatic difference, right? The slopes are quite different except for low and medium. High and ultra have quite a big gap, which is interesting to see. So we can see here on the 12-hour chart, because that's the easiest to read, the low and the medium are $1.22, the high setting is $1.48, and the ultra setting was $1.94. Now it is really important to keep in mind that this is at 4K as well. If we go back to the other chart, we can see that of course the resolution does make a little bit of a difference. Unfortunately, my 4K and 1440p results are not exactly right to compare each other, well, specifically the 4K one. So we're going to figure out, is it better to idle your PC? Is it better to have it from cold boot and shut it down all the time? Or is it better to sleep your PC? Now, before we go any further, I just want to explain that the cold boot, so turning on my computer every time, is not a steady workload. It's short, and there are different wattages that can come up quite quickly, which my smart meter is not able to read properly as well. Also, keep in mind, I have no idea what the actual wattage could be. I'm just showing you what I saw on there, so do keep it with a little bit of a grain of salt, please, because it's not exactly correct, and as well, again, it's just not a steady workload. The shutdown method, I took an average of the idle and what the actual boot wattage was and just averaged them out. So we got 212 watts for 5 minutes. Then we go into idle. We got 177.6 watts. And then we got sleep, which is only 2 to 5 watts, right? So our winner here from a pure electricity cost point of view, it's sleep. Now, please, please, please take this with a little bit of a grain of salt, because we're going to go over a little bit of nuance here. So we're talking only a few watts with sleep, which is almost nothing. If you're stepping away for a bit, like overnight, or even like a full day, maybe just one day, sleep is usually the cheapest option, just from a pure cost point of view, technically. But that does not always mean sleep is the best option. Now remember, when you put your PC into sleep, it has to put the system into memory. And over time, you can experience some issues because the PC keeps having to pick up where it left off. See, now personally, I actually use the sleep option when I'm working on active work that needs to be open all the time, and it's annoying to keep opening multiple programs. But when I know that that's done, or I know I'm done for the day on the computer, I shut the computer down. That's kind of where shutting down makes sense. And honestly, guys, for me, personal habit, I shut down my PC pretty often. And as well, we can see that the electricity cost is pretty negligible between the two. So, you can just pick what you prefer here. So, the conclusion is technically that sleep is cheaper. But I guess if you always had your computer off and you only used it to the point where sleep is actually cheaper, you might not be using a PC that much, right? Because the cost of the sleep mode is just that low. But hey, I guess it makes sense why people want to know this, why it's important. But personally, yeah, I don't think sleeping your computer is a great idea all the time. But hey, it is okay to do in short periods of time. And by far, don't idle your computer. That is probably the worst thing you can do, right? Because one, that's the PC actively running, and as well, it's also using the most cost, although still low. Probably not a great option to do that. Now we're going to do our daily PC electricity cost. Now I'm going to use 6 hours total here, and we're just going to assume that, a bit of a grain of salt here, because who's this disciplined to use their PC like this every single day? It's impossible, right? So for our idle usage, we got about an hour, so it's about 0.05 cents. For our general use, it was around about 2 hours or so, probably pretty normal for me, about 12 cents. Then we have AAA Gaming, which is The Last of Us Part 1. We played about an hour. We're playing about an hour after work every day. Let's say, for example, I don't, but that is what I put here, 16 cents, so a little bit more expensive. And then let's say we play some esport titles with the boys, like Valorant or League, about an hour or so, so for 0.08 cents. Our daily total cost for that day was 0.43 cents per day. So that equals $12.75 per month, or $155 per year. So that's what we've come to for our breakdown. This includes our AAA gaming and our general use and everything like that. So PC electricity costs on this particular example stays under 50 cents per day. Now, is that realistic for me? No, because I have a job now. a J word. I probably don't do that on the regular anymore. Maybe on the weekend I'll be on for around about like 4 hours or so, but it's probably a little bit less than what I think it is. However, it was good to quantify this and actually see what we came to. Thank you guys so much for watching. Check out wisetech.org for some more awesome content. But other than that, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye!